Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Discovery Debrief, a podcast that dives headfirst into the proverbial deep end of the latest trek into the final frontier, Star Trek Discovery. I'm co-host Chris Clow, and I'm joined by our full complement of our bold panel of Star Trek franchise explorers, including Rachael Clow.
Hey, Chris.
Hello. Zaki Hasan.
Greetings.
And Cicero Holmes.
Ariam, I'm so sorry.
Oh, you're going to make us all cry like at the very beginning of the episode. My
I
God.
do this.
You do. So, as I said at the beginning of the last episode, we're in the process of playing a little bit of catch up with the episodes that we've missed over the last couple of weeks. So we decided to try and catch up as quickly as possible by doubling up the episodes that we talk about into 2 recordings. So with that, we are concluding our catch-up session by discussing Season 2 episodes 11 and 12, respectively titled Perpetual Infinity and Through the Valley of Shadows. Of course, though, we're going to ease into our episode discussions by talking about what everyone's been up to since the last time we all got together. But hey, since most of us just recorded 48 hours ago, and 3 of us caught you up on what we've been up to, this is an all Zaki edition of what have you been up to. So I'm tempted to just go with this.
Zaki,
But hopefully it hasn't been that bad.
I feel like I need to come up with something to complain about now that you've played that. Did you ever notice? Yeah.
Well, Zaki, we actually, I'm not sure if you got a chance to listen to the last episode, but
Not yet.
We caught up with what we were up to, but we also talked a little bit about what we all thought of Captain Marvel and Shazam. So what have you been up to? And as a side note, what did you make of those movies?
Well, I have been up to the usual thing where I'm just racing from school to school, hoping to put right what once went wrong. My semester is winding down, so it's just ridiculous. But you know what's funny is I realize I'd be like, oh man, my semester just started. It's ridiculous. I'd be like, man, it's midterms. It's ridiculous. Semester's winding down. It's ridiculous. I should just be like, it is ridiculous. There will be no non-ridiculousness. This is it. This is just how it is. I need to come to terms with that.
This is just what you do now.
This is who I am. I know. But in regards to your other question about the 2 Captain Marvels currently, I liked them both to varying degrees. I would say I liked the DC Captain Marvel, aka Shazam, slightly more. Mm-hmm. However, I appreciate the fact that so many people have enjoyed the Captain Marvel from the actual Captain Marvel, the Marvel one. Even as I was not over the moon about it, I love that a lot of people are.
It sounds like you are probably in line with Rachel and I,
Right,
on which one we liked a little bit better. But I think that's a fair assessment. Cicero, what do you think about that?
Oh, well, yeah, of course it's a fair assessment, and especially since...
Yeah, but you like going after him, so I'm pitting you two against each other.
Exactly. Well, I mean, Zaki is the film critic amongst us, so, I must defer to his expertise. But as I said a quaint 48 hours ago, I enjoyed... while I enjoyed them both very, very much, I enjoyed what they did with Captain Marvel proper, as opposed to, not even as opposed to. I enjoyed what they did with Captain Marvel thematically from the standpoint of all of the Marvel films seem to have a theme, outside of most of the Captain America films. Winter Soldier, obviously an excellent espionage film. The Iron Man films are just kind of, paint by numbers action films. But the other kind of offshoot ones, the Guardians are goofy, like they all have their own kind of theme to them. Ant-Man is a heist film. And, the Guardians are, wacky sci-fi kind of comedic, Star Wars. And this film, Captain Marvel, felt like a buddy cop film between Carol Danvers and Nick Fury. And I was saying that even over the course of 21 films, we have seen Nick Fury, but this was the first film that we got to know Nick Fury. I think that it's going to be interesting for those people who have seen Captain Marvel when they finally go to see Endgame, because, the world will stop when Endgame releases. It will definitely be interesting to see how people react, how people feel internally about Nick Fury when they see him on the screen. I have this sense that people will feel like they know him at a much deeper and more intimate level than they had they, prior to seeing Captain Marvel. And I think that's something that may have been overlooked, and is definitely something that I've kind of planted my flag on.
Huh. I liked all of the Nick Fury, Carol Danvers stuff. I think the issue I had, and I should couch this by saying this is not an issue that is universal. So I don't want to act like I'm speaking on anybody else's behalf, but I didn't feel like I got a real great handle on who Carol is.
Sure.
So I appreciated what the filmmakers were trying to do. And I liked that, but the movie ends, and the comparison I made is like, I needed a moment like, when Dr. Erskine tells Steve Rogers, you're like, where he points at his chest and he, meaning you're a good man, or stay a good man, something like that. Something that really buttons the character in a very easy way. And I feel like, well, we like Carol Danvers because we're supposed to like her, but we didn't. There was an opportunity in the backstory to enrich that beyond just, well, she's the hero of the movie because that's who the movie's named after, And it's not really. She's never called Captain Marvel in the movie,
right? No, she's not. She's not. It's kind of Man of Steel.
Yeah, right. I feel like, one theory I've heard is that like she will adopt the name the title Captain in Avengers Endgame in honor of perhaps a captain who.
Oh, good God.
Right.
Oh, no.
There needs to be a captain. Right. Yes.
But, there's the thing at the end, near the end, where she's talking to Jude Law. Jude Law's like, prove yourself to me. And she's like,
right.
And that moment is fantastic.
Yes.
It's great. And I get what it means, not just in terms of the character, but also in a broader sense in terms of the discourse about, feminism.
Right.
But, so the what I've heard from people is like, man, that moment, like especially from women, like, oh man, that moment I felt that. And I'm like, that's awesome. I'm glad you felt that. Right. I wish I had felt it in the same way.
Yeah. So, and when you were talking about, you didn't feel like there was that moment, that was definitely the moment that I was thinking of, that it was that moment, kind of encapsulated the entirety of the movie and the entirety of what we knew about Carol Danvers, where, I think they spent a lot of time. And this is one of the things that I really, enjoy and appreciate about this film, is the fact that they were so very subtle. Like there were a lot of overtones about, woman power and girl power, and how this was going to be empowering for women.
It's funny that you say that though, right. Because Rachel told me
I think the exact opposite, Cicero.
Right. You told me after we walked out of it that you felt pandered to.
Yeah. I was like, I felt like they didn't characterize her beyond like, well, I mean, they did to some extent, but I felt like they leaned way too heavily on like, she's a girl.
Yeah, I agree.
Hero.
And I was like, I feel like Wonder Woman did more of that than, because like Wonder Woman had a nonsensical love interest, that really didn't really drive the story above and beyond.
It's not nonsensical. He's Chris Pine,
right?
It's planetary,
right? Yes, ludicrous. But I did feel I've spent 0 minutes, 0 days, 0 hours, 0 seconds as a woman. So, take from it what you will. But I thought that this film did a great job of just kind of saying like these matter of fact things, that her and her friend were incredible pilots, but they couldn't be combat pilots because they were women. And, they didn't go deep into that. That's just how it is. So they just dealt with it. And they knew that they were secure enough in themselves that they knew that they were good enough pilots to compete with everyone else, with the men. They just weren't allowed to. And the fact that Jude Law continued to tell her that she was essentially not as strong or not as smart, as not as powerful as he was. And all the power that she does have was granted to her by him. So she was, so he put her in a place that was subservient. And throughout the entirety of the movie, I felt like there were these subtle overtones of her being subservient to the men in the world. And that moment with Jude Law, where Jude Law is, bursting with machismo and is saying, stand up here and fight me like a man. And she's like, no, what for? Because that's dumb. And that's, I felt like that was that moment. And I appreciated it for that.
I guess.
Go ahead, Zaki.
The only thing I'll add is I agree with what Cicero said. I think what I wish there had been more of was just a sense of who, like what we got in that moment is here's who Carol is now. I wanted to know who Carol was before.
For sure.
Above and beyond, like she's a victim of institutional sexism and stuff like that, which is important. I'm glad that's in there. I just wanted more.
Sure.
But I have a feeling that this complaint will end up being academic in the long run because we know there's going to be sequels, number one, and beyond that, for all we know, Endgame is going to add an entirely different layer of texture. So this commentary, this conversation we're having right now is almost just like a little stick pin in time.
Right.
Well, we did, if debrief listeners do remember, we did get together to discuss Infinity War a year ago. So we may have to follow suit when Endgame comes out because it is coming in the off season of our subject show.
That is correct.
So we're going to need to talk about something. Might as well be the biggest movie in history that is apparently outpacing its predecessor's ticket sales by scales. 6-1 or 5-1, something like that.
God.
Yeah, it's insane.
So, a friend of mine and I were just today speculating on, so Captain Marvel, to point to that success, the Marvel Captain Marvel, has just surpassed $1 billion in ticket sales. Right. So congratulations to everyone in that team. But, we were speculating at how many billions with an S and a B and an S, Endgame will accumulate over the course of its run, in the theaters. And my question is, will it be the top grossing film of all time, even adjusted for inflation? That's
all I know is that I'm rooting for it to topple Avatar.
That's it.
Is that the top grossing?
No, the top.
Inflation?
No. Adjusted for inflation is Gone with the Wind.
You think it's going to do better than Gone with the Wind?
If any movie could, though, it's probably Endgame.
Maybe, yeah.
Like, unlike virtually every other franchise under the sun. I mean, remember when people were speculating how many billions with an S that The Last Jedi would do, even in comparison to The Force Awakens, and that didn't end up happening. But unlike that, it seems like Avengers has more momentum in that regard, especially if the pre-sales are any indication.
Top five adjusted for inflation: Gone with the Wind, Episode 4, Sound of Music, E.T., and Titanic. Avatar is 15th on the list, but so to be number one, adjusted for inflation, it would have to surpass 1,854,769 and 760. $1,854,769,700. So $1.9 billion.
And that's domestic, which is a hell of a tall.
No, that's worldwide.
No, because worldwide, I'm pretty sure that Force Awakens top 2.
Then it's domestic.
So I'm pretty sure it would have to be. Well, either way, this has been the Marvel Universe.
I was about to say.
You know what? You know what this honestly just makes me resentful that no one appreciates Star Trek nearly as much as this stuff. I'm still bitter about it. Star Trek should be $1 billion franchise, but it never will be, and I've made peace with that. But hey, that's just the camp that I'm in.
I don't think Endgame will beat Gauntlet.
Okay, all right.
I'm just gonna say that.
Throwing down the gauntlet.
We will reconvene at a later date to discuss this further in a more dedicated Marvel episode of Discovery Debrief. But I mean, as you guys might know, we have quite a lot to talk about here. So I know I've been saying this a lot lately, but since we have a lot to talk about, we're foregoing our discussion of franchise news in order to maximize the time to talk about Discovery episodes. So without further ado, let's begin our discussion of Season 2, Episode 11, Perpetual Infinity. So as before, here's a quick and dirty recap of the episode that misses a lot of the detail, but it'll be a quick refresher on what happened at kind of a high level since it's been a couple weeks since any of us have seen this episode. We begin in the past, approximately 20 years ago, when the Burnham's laboratory is attacked by Klingons. Michael's mother donned the time travel suit to go back in time an hour and warn them of the attack. She instead arrived 950 years in the future to find all sentient life destroyed by control. Tethering herself to a nearby planet, Dr. Burnham made over 840 attempts to change the future, including moving humans to her planet Terrelysium, to test how she can change history. Trying to stop control from gaining the sphere's data, Dr. Burnham was responsible for it crossing paths with the Discovery. Now the Discovery crew plans to upload the data into the suit and send it into the future where control cannot access it, while keeping Dr. Burnham in the present, but a control-possessed Leland intercepts their download. Georgiou and Tyler confront Leland, with Tyler gravely injured but able to warn Discovery. The crew is forced to cut the transmission short and release Dr. Burnham back into the future, with the suit now damaged. Control Leland escapes with half the sphere data. So, first things first, what did you guys think of this episode overall? Zaki, how did this one strike you? Start us off.
It does start to feel like we're winding. The momentum is building towards sort of something culminative, and so I appreciated that. I'm still getting used to Star Trek being so completely serialized. That's like a new thing. Yeah, especially like in these sort of these wind up episodes. It ends. It's like Walking Dead. Back when I used to watch Walking Dead, when it would end, and you'd be like, "Oh no!" I like all the pieces that are being put in place. I'm curious. I guess that's my reaction. Curious, because so much stuff happening, and you don't really know how to judge this one episode fully until the wind up, and then you get to be like, "Oh, okay, these are the threads that are paid off."
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a fair characterization. Cicero, what did you make of this one?
I enjoyed it a lot. I really enjoyed Burnham getting a chance to get to know her mother, right? Like it just going through those logs and kind of understanding her journey and understanding that the mother that she thought was gone, but the entire time she was trying to make her way back. And having a sense of that and trying to kind of process all of that in the middle of the crisis was something that I really, really enjoyed.
Excellent. Rachel?
I think of the 4 that we are discussing this week, this one is my least favorite. But it was still good and well constructed. It just didn't, light a fire in my soul.
Right. Sure. Yeah, and I tend to agree. This one, compared with a lot of the other episodes that we absorbed this season, I mean, it was a good episode, and I'm glad that I saw it, but it felt like it was sort of biding the time to something else, to some kind of crescendo. Zaki alluded to the fact that it seems like it's building to something, and I think we got to see one of the things that it was building to in the next episode. But this one, coming off of the revelation of the Red Angel and sort of sandwiched between that and some of the crazier things that happen in the next episode, this one just feels a little bit middling, but Discovery middling in season 2 is still far from bad. I would not call this a bad episode by any stretch of the imagination, but it just seemed like, it forwarded the plot a little bit. I think its runtime was a couple of minutes shorter too, which I thought was interesting. But it was fine, and there's still a fair amount of stuff that happened in it that warrants conversation. Speaking of which, I think one of the most prominent character arc relationships to start with is this newly burgeoning relationship that we saw between Leland and Control. Because for all intents and purposes, they've united into one after the events of this episode. And in many ways, it sort of seemed like Leland has embodied everything both beneficial and dangerous about Section 31 from what we've seen from him thus far in the season. But now he's serving as a subservient vessel for this AI, trying to bring its vision of galactic subjugation into reality. A lot of people have been making Borg comparisons to the way that Control kind of assimilated Leland's body, but I think any direct Borg connections are a bit far-fetched. But what do you guys think of the way that Control is trying to assert itself? How effective do you think it'll be by taking over Leland? And what do you guys think that Leland's role could be in the remainder of the season, if he has one at all?
Well, I think that it's been effective in terms of taking over Leland and, Leland's role as kind of de facto head of Section 31, the talking head of at least what we know to be Section 31, immediately makes Leland under control. Sorry, the pun, of Control, makes him a viable and credible threat to everything that's going on. Mm-hmm. And I think what we're going to see, and part of the, as we're building to the crescendo, I think part of the crescendo is going to be Leland kind of escaping, Mr. Big or from Dr. Claw style from Inspector Gadget, and that's going to lead into our Section 31 show, where Giorgio and Tyler and the rest of the crew of Section 31, like their kind of big bad will be Control and trying to thwart everything that they're trying to do. I've also seen the Borg comparisons online, but I didn't think much. I didn't put much stock into that.
Yeah. Well, very well said. Rachel, Leland and Control, what do you think about how all this stuff shapes up?
Well, I got the Borg comparison right away. He's infected by nanobots.
Yeah.
Which is like exactly what the Borg used to assimilate. And the writers know, knowing what they know, that has to be intentional, right?
So you think that there is some kind of direct thematic connection?
The thematic connection, I don't think that there's going to be like a canonical connection.
Okay.
But I could be wrong. But I think that this and what happens in the next episode, I think that they are at least drawing heavy inspiration from the Borg.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think that's a fair characterization. Zaki, what do you think of that?
Yeah, Rachel echoed a lot of my thoughts about the writers. Like, no, I mean, you put something like this in there, you're going to draw Borg comparisons. So they did it very deliberately. I feel like there's going to be some kind of tie-in. I don't think it's going to be like, oh, this is where the Borg started. But I feel like why do it otherwise? Like the Borg are not some one-shot, greebly pasted on their forehead villain from some episode. I mean, the Borg are the Borg, and that people know what the Borg's characteristics are. So there's something there, I think. That'll be some kind of tie, and I feel like it'll be oblique. I don't think it's an origin, but it's something. I also feel like this thing with control is going to lead us towards something that allows us to reconcile where Section 31 is at in this period in the chronology versus where it's at by the 24th century, where no one has even heard of Section 31.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a very fair thing to say. What do you think? Since we didn't get to ask you about this in the last episode, what do you think of Control shaping up to be the primary antagonist of the season overall?
Well, I mean, it's like I said earlier. You kind of have to wait to see the season wrap up to be like, well, did it pay off in a way that makes sense? I'm intrigued. I'm curious. It was a nice twist. I didn't see things sort of swerving in that direction. So that has me intrigued. And again, I'm willing to stake out that part of the hill that says that this has something to do with the Borg. Mm-hmm. I don't know what that thing will be, but I feel like that's something that we're going to end up building towards in some way.
I mean, if anything, the immediate reaction that I had, particularly when it took control of Leland's body, was that it answers why the Borg's veins are black, because that wasn't ever it was always just like a makeup choice, right? But now we actually get to see, oh no, the blood vessels themselves are actually thick enough with nanites that it actually blackens the veins on the outside. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. They could kind of explain that. I struggle with drawing a direct line. I mean, Zaki, I think you make an excellent point when you say that this has to be deliberate because of the imagery that was employed. That's very Borg-like. Rachel made that connection too right after we saw the episode. And I just... it's hard for me to draw that direct line just because of everything that we think we know at this stage about the Borg. Not only the fact that they're in an entirely other section of the galaxy, but maybe you know what it might be? Maybe I just can't get over the fact, because in my brain I'm so subscribed to the notion of the Borg being tied to V'ger. And if something erases that, I just can't deal with it. Maybe that's it. It's like my own my fanboy embeddedness.
Your headcanon.
My headcanon is so strong. I mean, it's such a strong connection, though.
But I mean, well, that's like from the Shatner books, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean, again, that's not to say necessarily that this is like their beginnings,
right?
Because I think canonically they go back much further into the past, right? I mean, that's the way it's always been characterized, that they were a society not too dissimilar from regular societies that we know, that just kind of slowly started embracing technology before it ended up taking over completely. Okay, let me say this. If it turns out that some Starfleet thing ends up causing the Borg, I call foul on that. I think that's stupid. I hope they don't do that. I do feel that whatever they're doing right now with Control is deliberately meant to evoke the Borg, and they wouldn't be evoking the Borg unless there was some game plan. That's my thought.
And I think that's a very fair perspective to take. And I think you're probably, you and Rachel both are probably totally right in that regard, because these writers have proven over and over again that they know all of the nooks and crannies of the world that they're occupying. And I would have a hard time thinking that they wouldn't be evoking that if they weren't trying to do it on purpose. So, yeah, very well said. Well, let's move on to the next relationship. And I think we definitely have to touch on the newly developed dynamic between Dr. Gabrielle Burnham and her daughter, Michael. It was a bit harsh seeing Dr. Burnham almost completely dismiss her daughter, especially when she talks about it was such a weird scene to watch because it was really uncomfortable, at least for me. But she talks about being desensitized to the image of watching her daughter die because she's already seen it so much. So she's already effectively let go of Michael because she's had to watch that so much. And Michael's clearly shaken by the fact that she's even able to speak to her mom again. And even in spite of the way that Gabrielle is trying to separate herself from Michael, the writing still makes clear how much she does actually love her daughter. So now that we get to see Gabrielle more clearly, what do you make of the way that she comes across here? Did you find the reunion between mother and daughter to be powerful while you were watching this one? Rachel?
I think I agree with you. I think I found it sort of strange and odd that she wasn't having this sort of emotional reunion with her because she had effectively like let her go in her mind. I don't know. It was so narratively unsatisfying for me.
Oh, okay.
But I guess it makes sense. Like she's living a bajillion years in the future. Everybody else, it's like she says, I think something to Pike about like, hey, you're a ghost to me.
Yeah.
This has all already happened. And so none of this is sort of real to her. That's what I got as explanation for that, for her behavior. I don't know. I didn't buy it, I guess. I felt like if you got a chance to talk to your daughter, even if you'd already watched her die so many times, I think you would still want to talk to her. I don't know. Unless it was too painful because she knows she's going to have to watch her die again. I don't know.
I mean, at the beginning, when Michael walks up to her, like, I think the first thing she just says is no. Like,
yeah.
Which no, sounds
too painful.
Right. Yeah. Right. Like there's something there.
Yeah. It's just
thou doth protest too much.
But no, I think she's just like shutting it down, right? She's like, right. No. Like, I'm not doing this because I can't do this. But right, that was just really unsatisfying for me because I guess what I wanted was them to be like, oh, I love you.
Very good. Zaki, what do you think about the reunion between mother and daughter here?
Yeah, I agree with Rachel. It didn't do much of anything for me. And maybe that, like, maybe those expectations not being met is itself what the intention was. It feels, the relationship feels a little bit pregnant, like there needs to be some resolution down the line.
Sure.
But yeah, it's kind of like so much. It's like, okay, well, let's just wait and see.
Yeah, and since we didn't get to ask you about this last time either, what did you make of the revelation of the Red Angel's identity in this regard?
Initially I was like, come on, like it feels very like initially I was like, oh, it makes the universe feel small. But then with a little bit of distance, I was like, well, what it actually does is makes Burnham feel more integral to everything that's happening, right? And it does it does explain why she is our main character in this series. The other thought that I had was, I wonder if all the timey-wimey business is potentially seeding a way to explain why we never heard of Michael in anything before.
Yeah, that's possible. The theory that I shared in the last episode was that Burnham might not survive by the time Captain Kirk takes command of the Enterprise. But yeah, I like yours better. Well, it certainly would be, but I like yours better because I don't like when characters I like die. But
sure.
We'll see what happens. Yeah. Cicero, Gabrielle, Burnham, and Michael. What did you make of this interaction?
I agree with the rest of the panel that it didn't make a lot of narrative sense, especially since before they confronted, or before Burnham or Michael confronted her mother, she spent all of this time listening to her mother in these 800 different log entries talk about, in every single one, that she was coming back to them, that she was coming back to get her little girl, that she was coming back. And the thing that we know is, the thing that we knew was that the Red Angel always showed up when Burnham was at the precipice of death, and she would do whatever she could to save her. And then once we find out that it's her mom, then okay, that all makes sense, that she's out there saving her daughter, that she can't really stay with. But, so now that she's finally has an opportunity to sit and talk to her, she pushes her away and she kind of dismisses her when Michael already knows that she has deep, unabiding affection for her. Michael knows her mom has affection for her. Michael knows that that her mom is coming at every moment of, the chance that she could die to come and save her. But then her mother's going to pretend like she doesn't want to have anything to do with her at that particular moment. Like it didn't fly with me.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. And I can see that. The entire tenor of their conversation, I felt a little bit numb to it. And I think that reaction on my part was dictated by Dr. Burnham trying to drive a wedge of distance between them. And I'm not sure if that was the intended response. Of course, once again, Sonequa Martin Green gave a singularly powerful performance. I don't know how she does that thing with her eyes. But she does it, and she does it really well. So
what thing, Chris?
Like just like the crying, like she can have the tear, like her eyes get super big, and the tears just start streaming down her face. And every single time she does that, it really connects with me. But there was something about Dr. Burnham trying to be disconnected from that reaction to Michael that gave it kind of a lopsided presentation in my mind.
Yeah.
And that, I guess that the way that you guys put it in saying that it isn't exactly narratively satisfying, I guess I feel that way too. I mean, that wasn't the immediate feeling that jumped out at me when I was watching it, but I guess it kind of did feel that way in the end. But yeah, I also think that there is a pregnancy to this, that this isn't completely resolved yet. And maybe we haven't seen the last of Dr. Burnham, and I kind of hope not. But either way, yeah, it was just very strange. It was a very strange kind of reunion, especially with what you mentioned, Cicero, with all of the things that Dr. Burnham related wanting to get back to at some point. There was an incongruity, let's say. But there's also we're going to stay in the theme of mothers here, because there's a really rich character interaction between Gabrielle Burnham and Philippa Georgiou, who are effectively two of Michael's mothers. Gabrielle even tells Georgiou that she saw the former emperor sacrifice herself for her daughter in some future. And Georgiou responded kind of flippantly to that, thinking, I think you are confusing me with my sentimental Prime Universe counterpart. And Dr. Burnham just basically looks her straight in the eye and says, I know who I'm talking to, and I know exactly what you're capable of. But there's more truthfulness that comes with the things that Dr. Burnham says, because she holds Pike's future over his head, that, you don't want to know what's coming for you. And we obviously know that to be the truth. But Gabrielle asks Georgiou to promise to keep Michael safe. And again, since there's a credibility added, since she knows what Pike's future is, does this new piece of information from Dr. Burnham confirm any of what you guys might have suspected about Emperor Georgiou? Were you surprised? What did you think of this meeting of the mothers as it was happening? Cicero?
If anyone's been listening to my commentary about Georgiou and her relationship with Burnham, this of course came as no surprise to me. This is as I've consistently said, even in the mirror universe, you could see the semblance of matronly love and affection, obviously put through a filter that may be a little bit foreign to to us humans, but Terran love is not all that dissimilar to human love. And as we kind of talked about in the last episode, I think that, Giorgio's, because of the lack of need to continue to be the emperor, Emperor Philip Giorgio Augustus, here in the Prime universe, some of that sentimentality has risen further, closer to the surface than I think, Emperor Giorgio would like and is probably necessarily comfortable with. But she is embracing it, because if there is anything that she loves in the Prime universe, it is Michael Burnham.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Zaki, as the resident Mirror Universe, I don't think you're a hater, but maybe you've just seen enough of the Mirror Universe, and the fact that this thread is continuing. I think you expressed a little bit of disappointment when we started to get an idea that Giorgio was going to stick around. But what do you make of this kind of a development, that she's potentially willing to sacrifice her life for Michael in some undetermined way? And how did you just take in this meeting of the mothers, so to speak?
To some extent, you see the pieces moving behind the curtain, right? So we know that they're working towards a Section 31 show with Captain Giorgio or Emperor Giorgio as some kind of protagonist, if not the lead. And so that's what they're seeding, right? I mean, this has to be a character who demonstrates empathy and loyalty and just, basic humanity. Otherwise, the question will be, well, why should I be interested in this show? And obviously, the fact that Section 31 is already so sketchy, Giorgio needs to be a character who is slightly less,
scummy.
I was going to say evil, but Section 31 is not evil, but they're more Machiavellian, right? So that's kind of an interesting dance, right? Like, too much Machiavellian will be a turnoff, and yet that's the reason Section 31 even exists. So, hey, let's bring in this mirror universe character and rehabilitate them so that we are okay with Section 31. I mean, you got to appreciate the long game that they're playing, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, I can see that. Rachel, the meeting of the mothers, how did you take that in the moment, and what do you think this means for the future of Emperor Giorgio?
I think we pretty well covered it in the last episode. She loved Michael, even though she loved her. She loved her. What do I think for the future? I agree with Zaki. I think that it's sets her up as an actual character rather than just sort of like a mustache twirling evil lady, such that she can actually carry her own show. Mm-hmm. And I think that is what they're going for.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you guys. I mean, honestly, and maybe this is where some of the dissatisfaction came from on your part, Zaki, but I've never really gotten this outright evil from Emperor Giorgio, even when she was still on the throne. You know,
right? She's eating Kelpians.
Saru.
I mean, that was pretty bad, but we were also kind of removed from it, and she still demonstrated in that moment some kind of affinity to help Michael out, even when she realized that it wasn't her Michael. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think you guys are right. In order to be a character worth following into her own series, we need to be able to empathize with her to a certain degree, but she also still clearly has that kind of badass countenance that you would think an emperor of a Terran empire would have. But yeah, I found this interaction to be really interesting, especially considering the credibility that Gabrielle Burnham demonstrated, particularly when she held Pike's future over his head. It's like, well, there must be something to this, which means that there's probably something more to Emperor Giorgio, and I'll be interested to see how that unfolds. last major relationship that I want to talk about for this episode is between Michael and Spock, because it develops, at least I think, in a kind of substantive way here. We now see that Spock can act as a kind of reassuring figure for Michael, who at the end of the episode seemed to have given up hope for actually defeating Control. Then Spock ends the episode by saying to Michael, and this is a direct quote, "Respectfully, Dr. Burnham was incorrect. Now does matter. What happened before no longer exists. What will happen next has not yet been written. We have only now. That is our greatest advantage. What we do now in this moment has the power to determine the future, instinct and logic together. That is how we will defeat Control in the battle to come. We will find a way. All of history can change with our next move." And then he set up a tridimensional chessboard, and then the siblings played chess. What do you guys think of the way that Spock and Michael have sort of come back around on each other? And Zaki, what do you make of the fact that this relationship has diverged from the antagonistic tenor that we saw in previous episodes? Why don't you start us off?
Well, I mean, we knew it had to end up back here, right? I mean, you can't have, if Spock dislikes Michael, then that's where we're going to be. I mean, the laws of storytelling say that, well, we start with them having this, it's the Riggs and Murtaugh rule, like you start with them over here and then we go on this journey with them and they end up over there. So we've always known this is where we're going to end up. So it's been nice to sort of watch what we know needs to happen, be happening.
Mm-hmm. Like sort of as goes Ohio, so goes the nation, and as goes Spock, so goes the Star Trek audience.
Right, pretty much,
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. Zaki, thank you. Rachel.
He just looks directly in my eyes and says, "Zaki."
We're live, folks. I don't have time to edit this, so this is all you're getting. Rachel, what do you make of the development between Michael and Spock at the end of this episode?
I really liked it. I felt personally reassured by Spock's little monologue there.
He is Spock.
Yeah, I know, but when Spock's telling you, like, hey, it's gonna be okay, we're gonna figure this out, I'm like, yeah, it is gonna be okay. Like, I'm pretty upset at the fact that the time-traveling person seems to have just vanished into the ether. I don't know what we're gonna do next. So he's like, no, we're gonna do this.
Spock has a pretty good track record of reliability when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's also good. It's also, applicable to every day, right? Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, I'm gonna figure this out.
Yeah. Good. Well, I'm glad that
Thank you, Spock.
Yes.
Spock 2020. Nice. Cicero, this relationship, what did you make of how this episode ended?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely heartwarming. Again, as Zaki kind of said, like, these are, I mean, Spock is the number one. He's the guy that you love. If you've ever been a fan of Star Trek, he is probably the guy that you have the most affinity for. But over the last, almost 2 years, we've grown, a certain level of affection for his stepsister. And to know that the two of them were at odds definitely, makes you conflicted as a fan, and to see them come together, is definitely something that is, warms the heart and gives you a sense of joy inside. So, that's great. The only thing that it does for me, kind of like what you said in the last episode, Chris, which is at some point they separate and Spock never mentions her again. What the hell happened? And we've got, as of right this second, 3 episodes left, but, in reality, only 2 episodes left, to figure out what that is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hope that because of Michael's connection to one of the most important families, to say nothing of the fact that she's got a connection to one of the most important characters in the entire franchise, particularly in this time period, I certainly hope that season 2 does not prove to be the last time that we see Spock, or Captain Pike for that matter. You guys remember a year ago, right? Yeah. Hey, I'd be into it, but a year ago, I think there was one episode where I brought up, well, what's the likelihood we're going to see a Constitution class ship? And one of you guys, I can't remember which one, said, well, we'll probably see a Constitution class ship, but it's not going to be the Enterprise. Are you kidding me?
That sounds like
we're not going to see the Enterprise. Well, either way, little did we know that, and I think as Zaki has said before, that this show is going to bear hug the continuity as much as it has. So the fact that she has become so embedded in the history of Spock and of Sarek, something is going to have to happen. They can't just leave this hanging, and I'm pretty confident that they won't. But it does just continue to, I don't want to say exacerbate, because there aren't really any problems that are created with this. The absence of Michael from what we've seen before is not stepping on anything.
What I always say, Chris, is how many episodes of Star Trek mentioned George Samuel Kirk's brother?
Yeah, true.
How many episodes mentioned Sybok?
Too many.
It's one of those things where it's like, whenever people complain about continuity inserts, I'm always like, it's like the Xindi conflict in season 3 of Enterprise. We're like, well, they never mentioned it in the other series. I'm like, okay, how many times do you talk about like 9/11 in any given day? And that was only 15 years ago.
Yeah. Well, on a more basic level, why wasn't Sarek at Spock's almost wedding?
Yeah.
I've kind of wondered that.
So,
myself,
kind of on that subject, but a little bit of derailing of such is, what does it say about Burnham's character that she has three prominent mother figures in her life? 2 people that she has called mother at one point or another, and a third she effectively could without missing a beat. In Giorgio, is like, does that mean anything? Have any of you guys ever, have you taken the time to think about what that could mean, or what it does mean, or does it mean anything to you? Zaki, I'll start with you.
I appreciate the fact that for once we're focusing on mommy issues as opposed to the usual trope of daddy issues. So that, just there's novelty there, which I can co-sign.
Yeah, Chris, what do you think about that?
Well, now I just want to see Amanda, Gabrielle, and Giorgio sit around a table and discuss their motherly philosophies for an hour, because I think that could be an explosive combination. But no, I'm inclined to agree with Zaki. Honestly, just as a longtime TOS fan, and as someone who always appreciated both the Prime characterization and honestly the Kelvin characterization of Amanda Grayson, I'm glad that she's getting more time, because I think that there is a really interesting story to tell there concerning the limitations that she feels as a mother who can relate to a child on human terms, and Michael coming into the mix only enriches that sort of philosophical disconnect that we understood her to have before. What that means for Michael and the larger fabric, I'm not sure. But honestly, that kind of just brings to bear and kind of reinforces, at least in my own mind, the fact that maybe we won't be seeing Michael in 10 years when the Enterprise changes hands. I have a hard time, and I certainly hope it's not like a Mephisto One More Day situation where, a devil snaps his fingers and all of a sudden Peter and Mary Jane aren't married anymore. That's
one that I got. Thank you very much, Chris. Yeah.
Not a problem. But yeah, I mean, the show is going to have to address at some point Michael's lack of presence, and I'm confident it will, considering what we've seen. So
Rachel,
far from the show.
have you thought about?
I don't think that. I guess I agree with Zaki in that if a male character had 3 sort of father-y type figures in his life, I don't think it would be completely outside of the realm of odd things to see. Right? That's perfectly normal. So, that's a relationship that we want to explore, is our relationship with older parental figures or mentors. And since Michael's a woman, she's, her relationships are maybe more intense with the women in her life. So, yeah.
All right. Great. Well, that's all I've got for Perpetual Infinity. So why don't we move along to our discussion for episode 12 of season 2, Through the Valley of Shadows. Once again, a quick and dirty recap. A new signal appears over Borith, a place sacred to Klingons, where a Klingon monastery is located and where monks guard time crystals. Tyler and Laurel sent their infant son there to be raised by the monks just a few months earlier. Pike goes to the monastery to try and retrieve a time crystal and finds the son is now a fully grown adult named Tenavik. Tenavik explains that life on Borith is affected by the crystals and that if Pike takes one, he will not be able to change the future that it shows him. Pike sees a future where he is severely disabled in an accident, but chooses to take the crystal to serve the greater good. Meanwhile, Burnham and Spock investigate a Section 31 ship that had checked in 10 minutes later than usual and find all of the crew dead except for one, an old colleague of Burnham's from aboard the Shenzhou who has been possessed by control and attempts to take over Burnham. Spock is able to stop control and they escape back to Discovery, but the Section 31 fleet is on its way. Pike decides to evacuate the crew to the Enterprise and then initiate a self-destruct on Discovery to destroy the sphere data. So this one, unlike the last one, I felt like the last one was middling a little bit, and this one, it had no similar problem, at least in my mind. But what was this like for you guys overall? Was this emotional? How does this play in with the rest of the season?
So this one, I said in our previous episode that I was a little disappointed overall with the Arium episode. I kind of felt similarly to you and you, Chris, and you, Rachel, with regards to the episode that we previously spoke about. But this episode, like you said, Chris, holy crap, it just balls to the wall. Android fight. All sorts of crazy stuff was going on. There were so many different relationships that were mentioned. We talked about Pike and his almost like need to, because of his survivor guilt to go out and go on these away missions where he knows his mortality is at stake. Burnham, finding out the revelation that Tyler has a kid. Dogs and cats sleeping together, mass hysteria. I mean, it was just crazy, man. I loved this episode.
All right. Excellent. Oh boy. Yeah, this one was eventful. Zaki, what did you think of this episode overall?
Yeah, I think this is one of the strongest installments we've had this season. And what I've tended to notice is that whenever there is like a heavy Pike focus, I'm just that much more dialed in. I'm in awe of how well they've constructed this character and the depth that they've added to him, considering that he before this show, he was in essence a blank slate. Like, we knew how his story ends, and we knew one adventure that he had. And so there was a lot of room there to really grow out while embracing the canon. And, reflexively, you're like, oh, like, we know like 2 things about Pike, and we're just those are the things we're gonna show you, and they proved in the Telosian one a couple weeks ago that like there's a way to do it and not make it feel like fan service. And then here again, it's not only one of the strongest acting performances from Anson Mount. I mean, I think it's just in one moment he becomes like the greatest Starfleet captain of all time.
Yeah. It's hard to disagree with that. Rachel, what did you think of this one overall?
I really liked this one. It seemed so much shorter than it was.
Yeah.
Like, when it ended, I was like, oh, but what? Like, it was just, that time just flew by for me, which is a fun feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm inclined to agree. I mean, this one, I already had a desire for a long time to see more from Captain Pike, and before this series was announced, that just never seemed like it would ever be a possibility. And now we've had just about a full season of seeing some really truly compelling and legitimate extensions of that guy that we were introduced to back in 1964. And this episode brings almost an entirely new perspective on the integrity and the countenance of the man, which is even, I think, more enriched by who the captain was last season. It's a hard, from one hard swing, one direction, we're getting an entirely other hard swing in the other, where not only is Pike an effective commanding officer, but he's also, like Admiral Cornwell said, the best of Starfleet. And we see that on full display in this episode in particular. So, I mean, honestly, the whole time crystal thing made me roll my eyes, particularly earlier in the season, even back in the episode where Harry Mudd was using one to manipulate time around the show. I was like, time crystal, God, that's a hokey device. Couldn't they have come up with a better name? What the hell is this? This is stupid. And then it provides moments like the ones we see in this episode. And I'm just forced to shut up and acknowledge that seemingly hokey device gives us really great insight into a character who's proven to be endlessly compelling over the course of the season. So I was a big fan of this episode. But let's move on to some explored character dynamics. So we get a bit more forward momentum in seeing the relationship between Tyler and L'Rell. There's still clearly some bitterness toward the former Voke on the part of the Chancellor, but they're still very much bonded over the fact that they have a son. What do you think the future could spell for these two? How do you think this episode's interaction with the Klingon Empire at large played out? Rachel?
I thought it was crazy to see grown-up baby Voke.
Tanavik, yeah.
Tanavik.
Vogue Jr., right.
Vogue Jr. Once again, my hopes that this albino is the albino in Deep Space Nine have been dashed. And I am so sad.
Well, maybe it's Tanavik's son. I mean, who knows? It could keep going.
But Tanavik lives in like a time bubble. I don't think it connects at all.
Potentially not. Yeah, I can see that. Cicero, what did you think of the Klingon elements of this episode? And Tyler and
I didn't realize how much I missed the Klingons of Discovery until this episode. Okay. Because, well, first off, it seemed like L'Rell had put on weight. I know that's taboo to say. But it seemed like the prosthetics made her face fuller. Which I may have been like an allegory or, a metaphor for the weight that she is on her shoulders as a result of being the chancellor of the the Klingon Empire. But or maybe that was just me. I don't know. But like, I love that interaction. I love the fact that even though they haven't fully reconciled, or at least L'Rell hasn't fully reconciled, that she is in love with the person that is inside of Tyler, but knows that Tyler is not that person. And she literally says that, that she is able to also share a deep and caring affection for Voq, Tyler, Ash Voq, because together they made their son. And they can have that, they can be adults and have that affection. And that's where I cry Bush Mahonky, as shout out to Rich Hammond. That's his curse word. But because it's very rare to see exes who have kids react that way towards each other as soon after their relationship ends as theirs did. So, but like, it was great to see. It was definitely heartfelt to see that. And also I want to give a shout out again. I did this last episode. I want to do it again. These makeup teams are spectacular because as Anson Mount said in his interview in the start, like their After Trek show, I think Zaki knows the name because he shared it with us all. But like the Ready Room, yeah. So the Ready Room, the fact that Voq Jr. was able to be stoic but also be menacing at the same time, and you were able to feel that emotion through the prosthetics, and that L'Rell, the Chancellor, was able to again give you those feelings, not only with her words but her facial expressions and the emotion that was radiating off of her. That's an incredible job by the makeup artist, and also equally incredible job by the actors.
Very well said. Zaki, in season 1, you were kind of critical of the Klingon, not the plot, I guess, but sometimes an overbearing presence by the Klingons. So when they kind of returned to prominence here, what did you think, and what do you think of the forward momentum in the relationship between Tyler and L'Rell?
Yeah, I think Klingons work best as sort of the spice in the stew. So yeah, when season 1 leaned so heavily on them, and it was a lot of like, oh geez, yeah, this is rough. So I don't mind a little bit of it as character, and I think the fact that it's an opportunity for Tyler to get deepened as a character, and one presumes he will have a presence in that aforementioned Section 31 show. I think that's all good, and I think Shazad Latif, by the way, has been doing really good stuff this season.
Yeah.
The guy's got presence, So I'm glad that there is that opportunity to deepen his character, and the Klingon stuff is fine. I forgot that Borat is like the temple from that TNG episode. Somebody pointed that out to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like Rightful Heir, and I was like, oh damn. So that's what I'm saying. I love the ways it's just like, yeah, we're gonna be super nerdy about our continuity, which makes it even more hilarious when you see people on Twitter just like sniping constantly. Yeah, it's not real, it's not canon.
Yeah, total crap.
Yeah.
Clearly, like as soon as Borth was mentioned, I was like, oh yeah, and it was nudging Rachel and elbow and. Like, hey.
It seems like if there were time crystals laying around Borth, they all would have been a lot less weirded out that Kahless came back there. Wouldn't they just be like, he came out of a time crystal, obviously?
Well,
instead of
because he randomly pointed to a star and said, "Find me there," when he was dying, and that's when they decided to establish the monastery.
And there were time crystals.
Yeah, he didn't know there were time. He was on a whole other planet. But I really enjoyed the Klingon elements of this one. I I honestly though I'm worried about Laurel and her chancellorship, because the fact that she's holding such a secret like this, particularly when it comes to the fact that both Tyler and her son are alive, I feel like that's going to come back and bite her, and that it's going to open the Empire up to some kind of sedition, because clearly there's a change in affairs between the Klingon Empire and the Federation by the time it's Captain Kirk in the center seat of the Enterprise. And Kirk talks pretty openly about Klingon society being a military dictatorship, and how, they're always ready to fight. And so something's going to happen there. I don't think Laurel's going to be Chancellor for much longer, but I certainly hope that she sticks around as a character, because I find her to be very compelling. And I like seeing that she was on a D7 at the beginning of this episode. I thought that was cool. And Shazad Latif, it was really cool. And Shazad Latif has hell of a Klingon accent. I love the way that he says Kalis's name. It's just a nice little touch that makes the world feel all the richer. But let's move along. So one of the coolest interactions in this episode, I think anyway, came between Jet Reno and Hugh CULBER. Because Reno noticed in the engineering lab that Stamets appears to be kind of dejected while working. So Reno takes it upon herself to try and intervene and see if she can provide some positive perspective between the difficult relationship that CULBER and Stamets are experiencing at the moment. What did you guys think of the conversation between Reno and CULBER? And do you think that it could help provide some help to both men, especially now that the way that Reno characterized her own experience with her own spouse, and the kind of loss that she endured, and the fact that she observes that Stamets and CULBER have another chance together. Cicero, what do you make?
Comes in, she strikes again. She's like an assassin. She's a sniper. She just comes in, she lays down the good stuff. And she just, she murders everyone metaphorically with joy. And she left, and then she's gone, and I've got a permanent smile on my face. Again, I think in successive episodes, well, not successive episodes, but I guess, in a couple of episodes, 2 out of 3 episodes, Hugh CULBER has sat down with someone and received information that he wasn't necessarily expecting, but he definitely needed to hear. And I love in both cases, the first with Admiral Cornwell, I guess therapist Admiral Cornwell, and this time with Lieutenant Reno, the first time was just kind of like, you were seeking it out, but I think that I love the matter of factness of both of the sentiments that came from these two different people to him to help. It's almost like he's matriculating back into life again. And like, he's been reborn, and he was starting college all over again and trying to figure himself out. And that's kind of what college is all about, is this self-discovery. And these people have popped in and have really been, professors to kind of, mentor and guide him and drop these nuggets that he can follow and use them to guide him towards his passions. So I really love, I hope to see, at least somewhat of the formation of that arc, at the hardening of whatever that is by the end of the season.
Sure. Very well said. Rachel, what did you make of this interaction?
I thought it was laying some breadcrumbs for something that's gonna happen later. I don't know. It was sweet. It was nice. It's always good to see Tig Notaro. I really like her character. And I just makes me really look forward to see what's going to happen between CULBER and Stamets.
Zaki, what did you make of this when you watched it in the episode?
Well, I mean, there's the part of you that's like, well, we know we have to sort of end up at a place where they are back together. So they're laying the breadcrumbs for that. I think more for me, what stood out is the fact that here you have, a bunch of LGBT characters talking frankly about their same-sex relationships, and it's not a big deal. And it's kind of like, man, it took a while for Star Trek to get there, but that's nice,
Yeah, we're here now.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I mean, I loved how Reno comes in to relate her own experiences to much of what Stamets and CULBER are going through. She doesn't do it in like a way that talks down or that diminishes CULBER's own feelings, or Stamets's for that matter. Because she very easily could have been bitter and just said, "You don't you understand the chance that you have now? Wake up, you son of a bitch." She could have come in and felt that way. But that's not what she wanted to do. I mean, she tries to gently bring CULBER to that realization himself by expressing in rather gentle terms, you have another chance, and you don't have to do anything with it, but you can. And that's something that's worth exploring. And I thought it was a beautiful sentiment. And I was really, really taken with that moment as I was watching it. So I was very happy to see that, that kind of counseling can come from a rather unexpected place, because we've seen Reno be so blunt with her, hilariously so, but we've seen her be so blunt and kind of disconnected. She's kind of like a Han Solo of Discovery in a way, because she's not like totally connected to the mythology. She has a little bit of a separate perspective, but there also comes with that an unexpected source of light. And I think that's what I really appreciated out of it. But, last thing that we're going to talk about for this episode, and I think it's the big one, and I'm cheating a little bit because this isn't really a relationship, but it's the relationship between Pike and the future. Because not only do the time crystals allow us to see that Tyler and Laurel's fully grown son has become a guardian monk over the time crystals, but the crystals also provide Pike with an insight into what is inevitably coming for him. It's the fate that we're all so familiar with, that we saw way back in the menagerie. And when presented with the choice we'd never had any, at least I didn't have any indication that he would ever have. He's presented with a choice to avoid that future, but he chooses it. He effectively sacrifices himself preemptively and works past his fear, making peace with what will happen to him sometime in the next decade. What do you guys think that this adds to Pike's story, and how were you affected by this in the moment? Zaki, you had to have come away from that with, let's say, the feels, right?
Yeah, I mean, as soon as he touches the crystal and we see the explosion go off, I knew what we were seeing.
Right.
It was the thing that we'd heard about, and first of all, it's so cool to see that, visualized after only being told about it. But, again, just the way Anson Mount plays the moment when it comes to face to face with himself in that wheelchair thingy, that vulnerability, the fear, the actual fear. And then the way he pulls back from the ledge by invoking what it means to be a Starfleet officer. I always say this, that one of the main appeals of Star Trek is that it presents an aspirational future. It shows us a window into the kind of people we might be. And I'm sure I can speak for everyone on this panel that we all hope we could have the courage and character to make the choice that Christopher Pike made. And as a corollary, I wonder how many people in life will be presented with a difficult choice and make that choice because they saw Christopher Pike make it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Very well said. Cicero, the moment of truth for
that
Captain Pike.
scream, yo. Oh man, I mean,
Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
wow. So when this season ends, I don't know how it's going to end. We've got basically 2 hours left. I don't know how it's all going to play out, but I know that I will be sad. Not only because the season has ended, but also presumably so is our time with Anson Mount as Christopher Pike. He has added so much to what was already in my eyes a top 5 cast on television right now. That it's kind of inconceivable to think, and we already saw in the next up that he will be donning the new uniforms that Starfleet has provided and be back on the bridge of the Enterprise. He has added so much to the show. It is really kind of inconceivable to think that presumably we won't see him again. There really isn't anything precluding them precluding the Enterprise from making a cameo appearance here and there in the series as it goes forward. But his performance has just been so good. So good. And then of course, again, as Zaki said it perfectly, like just the intestinal fortitude, to really live by the strength of your convictions and your oaths. And in those moments of fear, of the ultimate fear, to be able to, find the will to steel yourself and do your duty is, beyond admirable.
Very well said. Rachel, the moment of truth for Christopher Pike.
Well, Chris, are we all in a relationship with our future selves?
You're going to blow my mind here.
You said it was cheating to call this a relationship, but I think we're all in a relationship with our future selves. Yeah, I was a little bit put off by the fact that he knows it's coming or whatever. I don't know. It kind of made my brain irritated.
And the cold water, ladies and gentlemen.
I don't know. I just because of Captain Pike, who Captain Pike is, in every scenario, he's always gonna make that choice. He's always gonna sacrifice himself for those people. And I think him being cursed with the knowledge of that and the knowledge that he's going to be so horribly disfigured because of his nature to do that is very terrible. But there's no scenario in which he does not make that choice, right?
Well, the difference is though that he could have effectively chosen to save himself in isolation, right?
Could he have?
Yeah.
So if he doesn't pick up the time crystal, that's not what is going to happen.
That was the way that Tenavik characterized it, that that the future would not have been solidified if he didn't take the time crystal. But because he took it, he effectively sealed his fate.
Right.
And when you think about it, there's a different, it's the concretization of what he's shown, right? So in other words, Captain Kirk has to help Captain Picard, and the odds are against us. The situation is grim, and he knows that's an outside possibility that he might die. But there's something different, and obviously Captain Kirk would make the same choice too. We know that. But if he's told, by the way, this mission ends with you, smushed underneath like a 20-ton bridge, so just bear that in mind, right? It's the stark finality of it rather than the offhand possibility of bodily harm, which always exists in the abstract if you're a Starfleet captain, right?
Yeah. It's
you're going to do this, and X number of years from now, could be tomorrow, could be 5 years from now. You're gonna be a crispy critter who speaks in beat.
Machine.
I think also though I understand what Rachel is saying, but I think also one thing that makes it different from what we've seen over the 50 years that we've been watching Star Trek, because I think our captain, our leader in all of those shows will make that choice. I think what we got to see that is unique to Discovery was the palpable fear that Pike had, and that he had to psych himself up.
Yeah.
So he, like, the very human response to finding out that information, and then the very human response of getting yourself back to center and then moving forward with what must be done. I think those things are unique to Discovery. While I do believe that Rachel is right, that captains, our number one baby face will always make that choice.
Well, yeah, I think you're right. I think that he's being essentially, in the moment, yes, you always make that choice, but essentially what he's being presented with is, this is going to happen. You're going to make this choice and this is going to happen. Would you do it again? Mm-hmm. Knowing, now I will present you with all this knowledge. Would you still do it? And that's not a choice that you get in your life, right? Like you're presented with right or wrong, but you don't see all the consequences for all of the different things. And so he's shown all of the consequences, the horrible consequences, and he still decides, yeah, it's still, I'm still going to do this, the right thing. So thank you for helping me appreciate this moment more. Because at the time, I was just like not buying it.
Oh man, it was such a.
And Chris was buying it like 110%, so I couldn't really say anything.
Well, I mean, it was similarly to Zaki in that as soon as that first explosion happened, I knew instantly what I was looking at, and I was just frozen. Well, the cool thing about this moment though is for the few people who watch this show without previous exposure to the franchise, because there's a couple, I'm sure. This puts into context something that we've all known and that we know is in this character's future. But now the full audience knows it. So there's value in that. But I mean, as soon as that first explosion happened, I was just frozen. And then my jaw dropped when I saw the chair slowly come into view. And I was amazed that we were shown that vision of Pike and an updated version of it that's even more horrifying than what we saw in the 1960s. And it was diminished a little bit when I saw Anson Mount tweet out a picture of him in that makeup smiling with his hand on his lap. But when I was watching the episode in the moment, I mean, the thing that I think I love the most about him being given the choice is that in some ways, even beyond what we see in Discovery, it gives a greater sense of justice to Pike's ultimate fate, where he is given kind of his own heaven to live in at the end of all of this, Yeah. And
Chris, just to add to that, I think this show has been very smart where, our Telosian excursion a couple weeks ago really solidified the extent of what the Telosians are able to accomplish, right?
Yeah.
So there's that added sense of like, it is real. What Vina is living is real for her, right? So it's not a hallucination.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
for her, it drove home the reality. The other thought that I had was it drives home why Spock risks everything for Pike.
Yeah, I didn't think about that until right this second when you said it. You're absolutely right, man.
Like no one else believed Spock. They threw him in a sanitarium, and here's Pike doing everything because Spock says it.
Yeah.
And it's like a debt that he's paying. You know, I mean, I love the context. I mean, you've got two stories that are being told 50 plus years apart, and yet they're intertwining across the mists of time, and each is adding context to the other.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cliche by this point, but you hear about, you know, the best leaders, we would follow them into the gates of hell, and you know, didn't really have that kind of context for Pike being that kind of leader, and now we do. Not just because of what we know he does to save those cadets, but everything that we've seen this season. Absolutely. And I mean, it makes, it kind of does alter the experience of watching the menagerie now, because, you know, at least a segment of the culmination of experiences that Spock must have had serving with Pike for 11 years. He's one of the absolute best. Why would you not go to the ends of the earth to try and save a man who deserves to be saved? So, yeah.
Spinoff. I'm just going to be stumping for that.
They've got the Enterprise set now. I mean, I'm sure it was a redress of the Discovery set, but still they have the components. I saw those red rails. It's there.
You know, I can't imagine I'm the only person that's had this idea. I am like 97% certain the folks in CBS are fully aware of just the over the moon reaction people have had to Pike and Spock. I'm calling it right now. There will be a spinoff series.
Hey, I really hope you're right. Star Trek Enterprise 2. Or I don't know what.
Yeah, they need a title.
Right, Pike's Place. There you go.
E squared. No, that has connotations too. But yeah, well, yeah, it just reinforces not just the greatness of Anson Mount's performance, but really the, you know, and another thing too, just before we dismiss for this episode, it gives even greater context to the sort of differences between each of the captains, because every captain, when developed correctly, has these identifiable traits that we can look to. And I mean, Captain Kirk, it's fun to watch Kirk in command of the Enterprise more often than not. But the sense of self-sacrifice, I think, is, if anything, that's what can define Pike. But the last thought that I had was just that this episode in particular, and what we know from the menagerie, just gives much greater context to that fortune that he saw left over from Lorca in the Ready Room way back. I think it was in the first episode of the season. Not every cage is a prison, nor every loss eternal. And it's just, it rings
He's
much
caged by that future.
And that loss is not eternal. Exactly. Yeah. So I really appreciate the fact that they threw that in there even more now. But yeah, any final thoughts, guys, before we dismiss?
So here's a final thought. I can't wait for the next two episodes, because that's all we got. But also, like, I hope they don't do like last year. There's a lot of, it seems like there's a lot of loose ends that need to be tied, and we've got not a lot of time to do it. And if there was a knock against last season, it was that things, the climax was a little anticlimactic because it was just so, it just went at a breakneck pace, and there wasn't enough time to,
It crashed. It crashed at the end.
But outside of that, man, I'm ready to go.
If there was one episode left, I would be much more nervous. But I think 2 gives it just enough breathing room. As long as they can stick the landing, then hopefully the second season will end better than the first one. But I mean, at this point, I'm pretty confident in saying that this season is better than the first one. I mean, now that we've seen the majority of the episodes, and I liked the first season quite a bit, all things considered. So, the fact that if they can keep the momentum going into next year, all the better. All the better. But, well, I think that's going to do it for episode 40 of Discovery Debrief. We hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, please like and follow us on our social media channels. And if you would be so kind, we'd also appreciate it if you wrote a review for the show on iTunes or Facebook, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen. It only takes a minute, and we'll be happy to read your review on the air when it's posted. Speaking of which, Debrief has engaged into a partnership with the developers of officially licensed browser-based game Star Trek Alien Domain Incursion. Send us proof of your review of the show on social media or via email, and we'll send you a key code that's worth approximately $60 of in-game items. It's that simple. If you have any questions, you can follow the show on Twitter at DSC Debrief, where you can also find all of our individual Twitter handles. And feel free to send us questions through Twitter, our Facebook like page, or by emailing us at hailingfrequencies@discoverydebrief.com. Please be sure to set your courses for this feed for future episodes, and be sure to join us as we convene next time to discuss the next episode of our subject series as we prepare for the inevitable end of Season 2. As always, though, until we meet again, please go boldly, my friends.